Hello, I'm Martha, and I am a certified death doula. And today on our podcast, we're going to talk about some of the lessons that you can learn about life and death just by being out in nature and gardening with your animals. Um, so, gardening and just being in a natural environment doesn't have to be gardening, can be hiking, can be taking a walk, can be just strolling around your backyard. There are so many lessons that nature can teach us if we just stop a minute and get out in nature and listen. And let's talk about some of those things today. So, one of the first lessons that I learned when I started gardening a couple of years ago, probably about 6 years ago, after my mom passed away, she had a lovely garden. And I was trying to learn how to take care of her garden. And I was a little bit anxious. I did not know how to garden, and I didn't know how to care for all these different plants and beautiful things she had in her garden. And it was a real moment of anxiety, and I had to learn quickly to how to nourish and how to keep things alive. And that first winter, everything died because that's what things do in the winter. All the beautiful flowers died. Her maple tree, all the leaves fell off, and it looked like a dead tree, and everything had died. And it really threw me into a depression, and it really triggered my grief for losing my mother. That I had killed her garden, it felt like. And it really was a hard lesson to learn. But of course, the next spring, everything came back to life. The evergreen trees came back to life. The trees budded. The perennials bloomed again and came back to life. And seeing that life regenerate itself was a huge, powerful lesson to me in the cycle of life and death, and how that is something that we have to get used to, that we have to really look at and understand that the death part is simply part of the cycle of life. Life and death flow together in a circle, and at the opposite end is death, and at the top end is birth. And so life and death kind of flow together in this never-ending dance. And it was a really beautiful lesson to learn. And I learned that by watching the garden and by watching things naturally come back to life. Another lesson that I learned from gardening is that nothing goes to waste. So part of gardening, you learn that you need to compost and to put mulch on your flowers. There's a funny saying that flowers don't grow without a little shit on it. And so learning that the scraps from my kitchen can help fertilize the flowers and help regrow and lend their vitamins from their degeneration process of breaking down and completely dissolving into mush. That mush is wonderful vitamins and is wonderful nutrients and all of the beautiful enzymes and all the things that are in that fruit or vegetable or piece of toast or whatever that I had in the kitchen that breaks down to mush, and you put that on the garden, and that death fuels new life. And there is no waste in nature. Everything breaks down and dissolves, ashes to ashes, dust to dust, and that dust is now vitamin, nutrient-rich soil, fuel for the new life to grow from. And you see this in forest fires and in other natural occurrences, that when there is death, that death fuels and serves as vitamin and nutrients for new life to grow. And that's a huge lesson for me, and really helped me out of that depression, is learning that, okay, nothing goes to waste. There's nothing that was there's no fails. There's no, something might die, but you turn the soil and let that be nutrients for something else to live. And that's a beautiful lesson that I learned from gardening. One more lesson that I learned from gardening is the art of pruning. So I'm out here this morning picking out all of the weeds from the garden. There's tons of weeds because we've had a lot of rain. And pruning, it felt at first like I was harming nature. I wanted to let Mother Nature do her thing. And I didn't want to impose on what the natural scenery wanted to do. And, you know, I had a year where I just let the garden do its thing and let Mother Nature have her way in the garden. It was a wild, woolly, crazy, you know, garden. And things got kind of out of control. And it wasn't as beautiful as it had been the year before. And I learned that there's a natural discernment that you have. It's your garden, it's your space. You can have it look however you want it. And that picking things out that you don't like, that you don't prefer, that you aren't attracted to, that don't light you up, taking those out of the garden leaves room for more of the beautiful things that you do want and that you do hold dear and that light you up. And that's a big life lesson that we all have to learn. A little pruning goes a long way to creating a better life and finding what you like, finding what you prefer, finding what makes you happy and what lights your fire, and getting rid of the things that are no longer serving you, picking them out, taking them out of your life, putting them out of the garden, getting them out of the way, clearing that path for new life to grow that will serve you in ways that enlighten you and that make you better and that make you happier. That's a big lesson that we can all learn from gardening. And I've had to learn that lesson over and over again because I always feel like I'm imposing. I don't want to press my will. But that's a lesson we have to learn. Have a backbone and, you know, state your claim and state what you want and make a life that you want and make those choices. Making choices is part of that discernment process. So making decisions and not being afraid to do a little pruning is a huge life lesson that I learned from gardening. Another thing I learned from gardening is simply grounding, being out here. I'm sitting on the ground, grass in between my toes and dirt under my fingernails as I'm digging in the dirt. Being in nature, grounding, there's an actual scientific electromagnetic exchange that happens between you and the ground. The earth has a natural magnetic field around it. And when you touch the ground with your bare hands or your feet or any kind of grounded, some people have grounding shoes, there is a natural energy exchange. The earth actually takes out a lot of negative ions, negative charged particles in your body. Every cell has 2 charges of particles, and sometimes you get worked up and stressed out and anxious and worried and all of these things that cause negative charges in our actual energy field. So by touching nature and getting out in nature, it sucks up a lot of that negative energy in our bodies, in our cells. It literally transfers that into the ground, and we get more positive electrons from the ground that naturally flow through your feet, through your hands, however you're touching the earth. You'll hug a tree, it's the same thing, that energy exchange of nature will take a lot of your negativity away and recharge you with positive energy. It's scientifically proven grounding is a thing, and it really, really works, and it really helps to help your mood. There's another study that also says that the microbiome, by touching earth and having your hands in the earth and your feet on the ground, that you naturally absorb the minerals and nutrients from the soil into your hands. Your hands are like little antennas, and your hands actually absorb the nutrients in through your skin and into your body. And so you're actually getting microbiome, rejuvenation from being out in nature and from touching natural streams and grass and plants and dirt. Digging in the dirt can help you. It helps your hormones. Having those microbiomes go in to help your hormones, your serotonin, your dopamine, all of the things, oxytocin, and all of the hormonal things that changes in your brain that trigger your emotions. And this is how just being out in nature and touching nature can really help boost your mood. Not just seeing beautiful things, of course, but also physically and scientifically. It can help boost your mood. And another thing that you can learn from gardening is how everything is connected. Everything plays a part. You really get the mitochondria is how trees and their root systems actually communicate and interact. And I've seen that. I have a crepe myrtle tree in my backyard, and across the yard, on the other side of the yard, I'll have a baby crepe myrtle try to come up, and that's because underneath the ground, they're trying to communicate and grow other babies all over the yard. And that happens with so many different plants that they will grow and spread. And it's so beautiful to see the communication that happens just between these natural plants. And there's a lovely documentary called The Secret Life of Plants that I highly recommend, that does a lot of slow motion photography and shows how plants actually interact and they actually touch each other and they will help each other. And I recently cut down a tree, and the stump lasted for years and years and years because the other trees were giving it nutrients and trying to keep it alive. And so there's communication that happens in nature. And then it's lovely to think about all of the little critters that are in the garden. Not only butterflies and bees and dragonflies and all sorts of little critters that fly around that I love, hummingbirds that I love to watch. But all of the roly-polies, thinking about, again, that mulching, kind of natural mulching that happens. Did you know that roly-polies are there to be kind of the garbage disposals of the garden? They break down and eat all of the, dead things and the trash. And my dog, has dog booms in the yard, and all the roly-polies are all over it trying to break it down and recycle it into the earth. Anything that dies in the earth naturally has a recycle system. And it's just lovely to see all the little critters doing their things, playing their part. So again, just becoming aware of all of the life that is in the garden that you don't normally think about and that you don't see has been so interesting. If you just stop and simply look and listen, you can hear the birds and the cicadas in the trees. And it's just wonderful. It's a whole symphony of life. It's right out here, waiting and ready for you to take a look at and for you to pay attention to. And it's a lovely, lovely thing. One last lesson I learned is how important water is. I have my little water fountain behind me, my bird bath, and how important water is, not just, of course, you have to have water the flowers and water the grass, but how important water is to my own body. It really made a huge impact on me, how I should be drinking more water, and how almost holy it is to have water in all of nature. It's the necessary for all of life, and it's a really neat lesson to learn and to just see it with your own eyes, how much of a difference being hydrated makes. So I hope you've enjoyed listening to the podcast and looking at some of my beautiful flowers in my garden and learning some of the lessons that the garden and nature has to teach us about listening and learning some of the lessons that are out here ready and available for us at any time. So come back to the podcast. You can like this podcast or subscribe if you have enjoyed this little lesson in the garden. And we'll be giving more talks on lessons of life and death that I've learned by becoming a death doula. So please join us again for another podcast soon. Have a blessed day.